All right, welcome back to Grimerica Outlawed. We have a special episode for you today. David Scarlett is with us. He's the chairman and founder of At His Glory, which is hisglory.me, a ministry that reaches millions around the globe. His Glory focuses on saving the lost and providing for the elderly and the poor with a viewership of 25 million strong. He's been a Marine, held director level positions in multiple companies, and he came to the word after an NDE, a near death experience that gave him a taste of heaven and a vision of Jesus. Thanks for joining us, Dave. How you doing?
Good. Hey, thank you for both having me.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, this will be fantastic. I thought you've probably told your story a million times, but our audience is pretty familiar with NDEs, and it's been a bit of a theme, like that these spiritual experiences have shaped some of our past guests and their work, their life's work, really. So, I mean, can we start just at that part before we jump into your current work and His Glory and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was a what I'd call a 911 Christian. Started as a Marine, served in Japan, security forces, Yokosuka, and then, as you said, I rose up the ranks of the corporate world really quick, and I was the youngest director in the history of AT&T, number one director in the entire company as well. Thought I had the world. I had the money, I had the fame, the fortune, all of that. And I was full of myself, and the Lord had a different plan. And so I was, as I said, a 911 Christian. What that means is I'd only pray when I was in trouble. And then once the Lord got me out of trouble, I'd go back to my worldly ways, because I was always successful, and I always thought I could get myself out of anything. And I had a marital situation pop up that was just beyond anything that anybody would want to go through. It's in the book, All for His Glory. So it's a book for saving marriages, keeping marriages together, and more. And if it weren't for that event, I truly believe that's when I started searching. I knew I couldn't do it myself, and I reached out to God, and to my mother. First of all, I said, I want to learn more about King David. And King David was an inspiration to me in the Bible always. And so she shared me where King David was in the Bible. Kind of embarrassing that I'm a pastor and run a ministry, and it started when I didn't even know where David was in the Bible. So I did that, and then 777 happened. 777. It was the seventh month, the seventh day of the seventh year. So God is always precise on His dates, and it was the 777. He called it my call, and that call was I got botulism toxin. I ate some bad chili and a chili dog, and which is a miracle in itself, because I came back from traveling overseas. My family and I were celebrating 4th of July weekend extended. And none of my kids, I had 3 young kids at the time and a wife, none of them ate it except for me. We didn't know what it was. And then on Friday the 13th, they rushed me to the Cleveland Clinic. As the clock hit Friday the 13th, they actually put a tube in my throat. And they literally lost me that first night that I was at the Cleveland Clinic. I did not know that until later on, when I had listeria. I'm the only known case to have botulism toxin and listeria and survive both, according to the Cleveland Clinic. Those are the kind of records you really don't want to have in life, but God had a purpose. So they get me into the Cleveland Clinic, well-renowned Cleveland Clinic. They stabilized me after losing me that first night. They got to get me off the breathing machine, because they didn't know what it was. They hadn't had a case of botulism toxin in 70 years. So the doctors were they couldn't understand what it was. And it was actually the Lord who told us it was botulism toxin. And then the doctors started investigating based on what the Lord said, and they confirmed it later on. But I'll never forget the point where 2 Cleveland Clinic doctors got me stable. And they thought, okay, we're going to get him off the breathing tube now, because with botulism toxin, your entire body, your entire central nervous system completely shuts down. You become paralyzed from the inside out. The only thing that I had going is I could think, and I could pray. But everything else was shutting down. I literally had to live. I couldn't talk, couldn't walk, couldn't breathe on my own. So they got me stable, and they pulled. And I'll never forget the look on 2 doctors at the Cleveland Clinic. When you see that panic in the eyes of the Cleveland Clinic doctors, you know something's gone wrong. And I knew in that moment my life was over. And I thought, you know what? I pray that my wife and kids are going to be all right. But I knew it was gone. And when I was in the Marines, we used to always say, what is the worst way to die? And we always would say, not really to be shot. It would be to drown, because the anxiety of not being able to breathe. And that's exactly what happened to me. But the Lord took away the pain. Immediately, I felt no anxiety. I felt no pain. And after I saw that look and I knew I was going home, this light came above, pulls me up to the third heaven where the Lord is. Everything was just vibrant. It was outside of time and space. It was absolutely like no TV set you've ever seen in your life. The sounds were like sounds you've never heard. Visual, sounds, smells, everything was just absolutely amazing. But the most important thing I want people to realize what heaven's like is the shalom, the peace, and the unconditional love of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It was beyond anything I could imagine. And so what he did is he showed me these beautiful mahogany pictures of my entire life, all from an infant all the way to the time at the time I was 39 years old. He showed me all those pictures, and what those pictures were, they were pictures that were never taken on Earth at all. What he later told me was those pictures were showing heaven is perfect. So everything going to heaven is perfect. There's no sin in any of those pictures, but there was something missing in those pictures as well. My report card. My report card was empty. I didn't do anything for him while I was alive. So he said, I'm going to send you back when I go back to the world. You're going to start a ministry called By My Name. Didn't quite understand that. So they revived me. They get me back after I think I was literally dead for about 5 minutes. And so they bring me back. They stabilize me. And as soon as I came back, I'm like, I just experienced heaven. And so I was praying to the Lord. I said, I didn't see Jesus while I was in heaven. I want to see Jesus. And I couldn't even get that prayer out of my mouth because I couldn't speak. And there he was at the end of my bed at the Cleveland Clinic. Never said a word, but he was just radiating with that unconditional love, peace, shalom, and just glow. It looked like the book of Revelation when he comes back with beautiful blue eyes and just radiating. And I just got that feeling of peace, love, and his shalom all over again. And then through that process, it was up and down. You know, even though I came back from heaven, we would take 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. I had 5 surgeries of a stomach because they had to put a feeding tube into me that was a bleeding stomach. One time I woke up in the middle of surgery while the Cleveland Clinic doctors are operating inside my stomach. I had collapsed lung. I had pneumonia, a hole in the heart. You name it, it happened. And finally, they got me stabilized again to try to pull me off the tube again. This time, they had every single doctor at the Cleveland Clinic on standby, so it would not go wrong. And there was probably 30 doctors in the room at this time. And they said, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Of course I'm ready. You know, I've already seen heaven. What do we got to lose? Go ahead and hit the button." And he literally hit the button, and immediately it went bad again. You could hear that beep, 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 beep. You don't like to hear the beeping sound of an ICU in the Cleveland Clinic. And there was a code blue that went all the way through the hospital. And that code blue, my kids were young. They were in the ICU waiting room. And they heard this code blue and they're running around playing a game called Code Blue. They had no idea that code blue was me. And immediately I felt that warm shalom again and that peace of the Lord. And I remember I left my body. I was up above the doctors because I could see the doctors panicking. They were come back, screaming. And I said, "Lord, why are they screaming?" Because I felt no pain, no anxiety. And he says, "My son, I got you, and I'm going to bring you back. This is your call." So they stabilized me. I came back into my body. Took a while to learn how to talk again, walk again, rehab again, speak again. All of it I had to do as a toddler. But fast forward, one of the things I asked the Lord about the call, I said, "Lord, I want to see a video of the call. Show me what you mean by what is my call? What is this 777 in the call?" And out of nowhere, I get this video after I'm rehabbing, and it didn't have any return address to it on email. I opened it up, and it's exactly 10 minutes long. It's called The Call. And I looked at it. It was 300 shofar blasts in Nashville, Tennessee. And it was Ricky Skaggs. He was blowing the shofar at this event. And it said The Call. And I said, "Boy, that's interesting." Looked at the date of that when that happened. It was exactly 777. Long story short, Ricky Skaggs and I became friends. He was one of my guests with the first Reawaken in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I brought him on stage, and the Lord spoke to him on stage and says, the shofar that he blew, the call for me, he gave to me on stage in front of about 8,000 people and millions streaming it. And that really completed the process of the Lord, the call, and going to heaven.
Wow, that's an amazing story. And where are you at now with the ministry, I guess, the website? It seems like you're quite involved in current events, news, pop culture, politics, maybe. Like how has it grown to that level?
So we I didn't know anything about being a pastor. I came from the corporate world, and so the Lord put me in a cave. It didn't start right away. I was in my next door guest house, and I studied the word of the Lord for about 10, 12 hours a day for years before he sent me out. It wasn't like near-death experience. The next day you're preaching the gospel. It took
that's kind of what I was wondering.
A long training period, and we had more trials and tribulations starting the ministry than we probably did with my near-death experience. And being a Marine, I never got shot at, but I've had at least 7 attempts on my life being a pastor for the last few years, telling the truth of getting the truth out. So to answer your question, we're really starting to take off. We were doing Bible studies, and the Lord said to me, he says, I want you to do something called a take 5. I'm like, what is a take 5? And he says, I want you to take your military background and your business background and give it a biblical lens of what's going on in the world today to share my glory. And once we did that, it took, and it became really popular. We reached 25 million people, every country of the world. I'm friends with generals, not just in the United States, but Israel, Canada, Australia, you name it, bringing intel of what's been going on in the world to me, and friendships. And you couldn't have made this up, and it's all the hand of God.
Canada has generals?
Canada has a general. One of them is my very good friend, one of the brave generals of, not a lot of them, but he is.
What does he have to say about the current state of Canada? We're both in Canada, so I'd be curious what he has to say about the current.
He's not a current general in Canada. He's a retired general, but he is obviously a patriot, and is just upset with what's going on, and continues to pray for our brothers and sisters in Canada.
It's getting weird for us up here. It seems to just getting weirder and weirder. I mean, now they're telling some of us we're not allowed in the woods. It looked like that might ripple right across the country, but Newfoundland blinked, so now it's not going to, I don't think.
Yeah, this is times for our brothers and sisters in Canada. We lift them up in prayer. We have a huge audience in Canada. Barry Wunsch, the Canadian Hammer, comes on with me every 2 weeks, and we pray for our brothers and sisters in Canada. Just the scrutiny and the turmoil that Canada is going through. Just, like Sean Voigt just going to churches a week ago, churches being fined. Arthur Pawlowski, which is a friend of mine, being arrested for keeping his church open during COVID. You couldn't believe this would happen in a place like Canada. When I was in the corporate world, I used to spend every quarter in Canada. I was in Waterloo. RIM, Research in Motion, was one of my big accounts. So I was there every year. And Canada, to me, was just an extension of our brothers and sisters from the United States, and it's gone bad.
Could end up that way yet? I mean, some of us could end up that way yet. I mean, there's 2 major parts of Canada. Probably Quebec is arguably running the place in some aspects, and they're talking about trying to separate, and the West is trying to separate. So it could happen. We might end up being closer brothers or sisters, at least some of us. I mean, it'd be a real shame if Quebec beats us out the door at this point.
Yeah, well, that's why we have to put our faith in the Lord. The United States was going through that with the Joe Biden, and prayers rescued. And I have many people that are praying for Canada, inside Canada, and they believe the Lord is going to respond to the remnant in Canada. I think you're going to see a major blessing coming and exposure coming as well.
What's your take on why this is happening, or sir, maybe not even why? Well, sure, maybe why, but what is happening with Canada? I mean, it to me, there's a bunch of different ways to look at it, but especially you coming from more of a religious background in the States, it feels to me like Canada's sort of been taken over by the globalist entities, and at least from a surface level, and America seems to be a bulwark against that, and a lot of our conspiracy peers and crowd, they don't, they think it's like deeper than that, and Trump would be controlled opposition or whatever. It gets pretty deep, but from a surface level, I can't help thinking that there's a bit of a spiritual battle here. I mean, avoid that that guy just sort of shined the light on this in Canada. It seems like Canada's the leading edge of the globalists or the EU type thing, and you guys are the bulwark against it. But is that what's going on, do you think?
Yeah, we weren't, though. We had to survive Joe Biden. We went through that. If Hillary Clinton would have been president, I don't think we would have a world today. I think the cabal would have completely taken over. And to ask your question, to make it very simplistic, this is not politics in Canada. This is not politics in the United States. This is simply light versus dark, good versus evil. Satan is trying to destroy man. The cabal is trying to create a one world type order, one world system through the WHO, the WEF, controlling leaders, banking, everything we do, as you see in Canada, where the brave Canadian convoy stepped up. The things they did to them is just unheard of. Again, I mentioned Arthur Pawlowski, a pastor that all he wanted to do is keep his church open. They beat him and put him in solitary confinement. They didn't feed him. He's got even more horror stories about pastors that are being done right as we speak the same way in Canada. And so I believe that United States first was the first part that God the Father heard our prayers. The nation of the Americans, we prayed and prayed and prayed, took action. It was a tough fight. My friend General Flynn famously says that, he told me this in 2021. He said they didn't think we'd get back up and fight, but the remnant got back up and fought every step of the way. And it looked bleak, and it continued to look bleak. But we kept our hope and trust in the Lord. We saw a breakthrough, and I see that President Trump is opening up those doors. And I believe we're going to see that exposure get to all nations. This is the greatest scandals in the history of the world. That's another thing the Lord showed me in January of 2017. He called them the Great 17 Scandals. And he said these will be the greatest scandals in the history of the United States of America. And he said these will impact the world as well. And sure enough, every one of those 17 scandals is in play as we speak and being exposed.
Can we get into some of those?
Yeah.
I just happen to have them here. Number one is 9/11. The Canadian general I'm talking about was there on 9/11 in New York, and went to his supervisor at the time. He was active duty. And I told him to stand down. So we're going to see the truth of what really happened in 9/11. And that's active right now. Benghazi, the truth. We were lied about the truth about Benghazi, the Clintons and Obamas, the covering up. That is in play right now. Our government is releasing classified information soon about Benghazi. You're going to see that goes right to the Clintons and the Obamas. The State Department is the genesis of all the scandals in the United States. And there's a huge pedophilia ring. And, the Lord gave me that again in January of 2017. And I was like, I know the State Department, but I don't understand the pedophilia ring. Nothing broke about pedophilia in the State Department until about 2 months ago, that Hillary Clinton literally covered up one of the largest pedophilia rings inside the State Department. And the State Department is
connected to Haiti? Was that connected to the Haiti?
Connected to Haiti, the Clinton Foundation, more. And remember, every U.S. ambassador comes from this State Department, which ties into the other scandals of, somebody like Susan Rice or Samantha Powers unmasking General Flynn. Why would a UN ambassador unmask a general? Why would they unmask these people? And it goes back to in Ukraine, what the purpose of Ukraine, money laundering, politicians being paid, ties to not just Democrats, but also Republicans, John McCain. Others will be named in this when they find the money, and they're close. They have the money. I just had President Trump's personal attorney on 2 times last week, and he says arrests are coming, and we have it all. The Clinton scandals is number 4. This is not the Clinton Foundation. This is the Clinton scandals. They have multiple scandals that are not a part of the Clinton Foundation. There's a couple lawsuits going on right now, one in Minnesota and another one in Arkansas, some of the dirty, horrible things that they were involved in. Number 5 is the Clinton Foundation itself. We now know we knew a while ago, but it's getting deeper. They sold uranium from Uranium One to Russia. 20% of our U.S. uranium went to a $145 million contract to the Clinton Foundation, which also, as you said, Darren, ties into Haiti. But that nuclear material, we now know, went to North Korea and went to Iran. our so-called sworn enemies. Next is you're starting to hear Eric Holder in the news again. Fast and Furious, how we literally sold guns. The United States government sold guns to drug dealers and cartel. And the cover-up was supposed to be because they wanted to assure an Iranian deal for Obama's legacy. It was much deeper than that, because we know now that Obama was being blackmailed on Iran about Osama bin Laden and much, much more. The next is the IRS scandal. We saw Lois Lerner was just the tip of the iceberg. Now it's starting to break that the IRS was using politicians to blackmail, finding financial information on certain judges, politicians, anybody that they could get put in a corner. And that's intensifying as we speak right now. And then as we just hitting here in the United States of America, after many people said it was a conspiracy, the Russia hoax, Spygate, FISA, Unmasked, this is all coming. People are starting to go to jail. Indictments are about to come. We see the Spygate where Obama spied on an incoming president and a sitting president. They abused the FISA courts for unwarranted warrants. And as we mentioned too, the unmasking. Unmasking is supposed to be the last level that you take for security under the Patriot Act in the United States of America. You don't put American citizens in harm's way by unmasking them. And that's what Samantha Powers, as the Secretary of State to the United Nations, which shouldn't unmask anybody ever, did it 300 times. And then Project Folsom, we showed that on one of my shows today. A general sent me this information. And again, Project Folsom was, not only did the American government inside spy on President Trump and try to get him out in a coup and treason, but our most valuable partners did the same. Project Folsom is the Five Eyes. Literally, we're working with Obama to trap President Trump. Hammer and Scorecard. We know Hammer and Scorecard were part of the rigging the elections. Hammer was run by John Brennan. John Brennan used this to be able to blackmail sitting Supreme Court justices, politicians, you name it. Rumor is today that John Brennan has left the country because he knows the time is coming up on him. Number 11 is Uranium One, as we spoke of, part of the Clinton Foundation, sending 20% of the U.S. uranium that ended up going to Russia, that ended up going to North Korea and Iran. And here we're worried about Iran nuking Israel or Great Satan of the United States, and we gave them uranium. You just can't make that up. The Federal Reserve is number 12. It's neither federal nor reserve. It started on Jekyll Island. That whole situation is going to come crashing down. The bankers, the financial system, which really impacts Canada. Banks are going to be exposed. There's been banks in Canada that will be exposed. More are coming. Next is 13 is deep state and Illuminati. Those are just conspiracy terms 4 or 5 years ago. Now today, everybody uses the term deep state and Illuminati as they go. It is real. There is a 13 bloodline from Satan that literally is trying to have a one world government and control the world. Reagan and JFK, what really happened, number 14 with Ronald Reagan, who I served under as a Marine, that inside our own government, it has now been released a year ago, JFK was taken out by our own government. Those same entities tried to take out Ronald Reagan as well. Number 15 is the United Nations in itself. There will be great scandals coming out of the United Nations. There's 2 bills in the U.S. right now for President Trump. One, to defund the United Nations completely, and another is to kick them completely out of New York City and leave the United States for good. Number 16 is the Catholic Church. There's 2 scandals inside the Catholic Church that are starting to break. They've been bubbling for a while. One is the horrible things that they've done to children in the bowels of the Vatican. That's one part of it. And the other is the Vatican banking system for nefarious issues, to say the least. There's 2 cardinals today. One cardinal that has the banking information. Another cardinal has all of what they've done to children, ready to bring it all out at the right time. And the last one is, which is in everybody's talking about, is NXIVM and Epstein. And I couldn't figure out why the Lord told me NXIVM, because I never heard of NXIVM back then, and Epstein. Why would they be together? Because up until about 3 or 4 months ago, I didn't think they were connected. Now we're seeing that they are both connected, and same type of playbook. NXIVM, Epstein, blackmail. They didn't just go to these islands to do nefarious things with younger people. These were done to children, just the most evil things you could ever imagine. And they used it for blackmail. It's one of the oldest tricks in the book, is to get blackmail to hold your political opponent or an ally or whoever it may be to do exactly what you want to do. And NXIVM, it was the same playbook.
COVID wasn't on the list. How does that sort of fit into everything? It's sort of this overarching thing between COVID and the lockdown, and then the vaccine and the fallout from that. So how does that fit into this this thing? Because some people were calling it the mark of the beast. Some people are saying it's not. I wouldn't mind just hearing your take on all of that.
Yeah, so I'll give you my thoughts, but we're really going to rely on President Trump's attorney. I had him on two times last week, and this is what he said. He said that Russiagate was what it started. They didn't expect President Trump to win in 2016. As soon as that happened, they were in panic mode to set him up. They went after General Flynn. They went after some of his key components around President Trump. They impeached him. They did everything they possibly can. They spied on him. So why did they come up with COVID? Because they couldn't allow President Trump to get back into office, because they felt, and they rightfully so, that President Trump back in office was going to expose this stuff, that there were going to be people that are going to pay for it. There were going to be indictments.
Was he always going to expose it? Because it almost seems like he took them trying to throw him in jail personally, because he seems a lot more hell-bent on destruction this time around.
I would have to ask him that. I don't know if that was part of his plan, but that doesn't hurt any. When you try to kill somebody, literally President Trump, last I was told,
that's right. I didn't even mention that. First, they tried to throw him in jail, and when that didn't work, they tried to shoot him.
44 times, I'm told, there's been attempts on President Trump's life. We've seen Butler, Pennsylvania. We saw his golf course. Those are two vivid ones. We know that there's an attempt through a whistleblower that Obama and your former Prime Minister Trudeau tried to take President Trump out with a missile off the East Coast. And there's that's three. But I was told there's 44 attempts on his life, lawfare attempts on his life. But COVID was a way to lock people down, get President Trump out of power, use mail-in ballots to flood the system, to beat the voter system so that they could take power. And then January 6th was the cover-up of the stolen election. Now there's evidence in the hands of President Trump's attorney that they have video evidence of showing that they planned January 6th way in advance to January 6th. There's video evidence, and his exact words, they are going to be held accountable. There will be arrest. So all of that is tied in together. Ukraine was part of January 6th as well. There were Ukrainian military or militia on the ground on January 6th that were active in January 6th. President Trump's attorney with me last week said the same thing. Ukraine is a central piece of that. There's evidence now starting to come out to Congress that Ukraine was behind the assassination attempt of President Trump. So all this is coming out, and Ukraine is just a huge money laundering scheme that goes back to politicians. People always wonder, how does the Nancy Pelosi's of the world make $174,000 a year, but they're worth $400 million? It's because of all these bills, this money laundering. President Trump's attorney said last week, there's 1.6 trillion with a T that is in fraud with just Act Blue. And they're tracing it back to the politicians. So they're very nervous right now, and they should be. You saw probably released yesterday, I had John Solomon of Just the News on yesterday after he released the bombshell about Adam Schiff, leaked to a whistleblower that he set President Trump up on purpose. They actually used the word treason. This is getting bad, real bad. Adam Schiff is not going to be able to survive this.
So what's your take on the first 6 months then? Are you happy with progress? Because there's still a bunch of people that are like, you're seeing it online, like, oh, well, let's have some arrests already. Like, it's still not happening, but it does feel like it's ramping up from an outside sort of looking in. It does feel like it's ramping up, and it is different. It feels different this time.
Yeah, it's intensifying. What President Trump did out of the gate, and back to Darren's question, I don't know if that took it up a notch. Obviously, President Trump has taken it up a notch, whether he was going to do it in the first term or the second term. It always works for God's will. If we wouldn't have gone through what we did in COVID and the stolen election, a lot of this stuff we probably wouldn't have caught. Ukraine, but we did, and now they caught them. And the biggest thing he did was coming out of the gate. They didn't expect him to come out with Doge, and that's the key. Cut off
USAID, all that. Yep.
Exactly. First of all, cut it off, because that's how the cabal operates. They got to have the money to do it. If you cut that off, that's step number one. That's what he did. Step number two is what they told me. Cash Patel, and I've known Cash for quite a while. Step number two is to take that money trail back to the people and indict them and make sure your case is solid. And that's where we're at right now. That's where the president's attorney with me said 1.6 trillion with just Act Blue. And they can trace it back to politicians. So these politicians are very, very nervous because there's a money trail back to them now. And then you see, just maybe coincidentally, that President Trump decides he wants to take over DC with National Guard. And tonight, as we speak, they're upping substantially, is the quote, more National Guard. And this is coming on the heels of Judge Janine potential. It's in her hands now whether she takes and arrest Adam Schiff. And if I had to bet on Judge Janine, it's coming.
Is that what the ramped up forces are for right now? Is it because they expect the public to freak out when they arrest Schiff?
I believe so. Obviously, they're not going to come out and say that publicly. We do a daily show called The War Report. And we work very closely with Mike Lindell and his team from the White House. They reported today on my show, The War Report, that they're planning on protest as soon as tomorrow against President Trump in Washington, D.C., paid activists. And we know that's the plan, that they're going to do the Summer of Love of 2020 all over again this summer and activate. So that's why you're seeing President Trump say, well, maybe we put the National Guard in Chicago. Maybe we put them in New York City. We're going to need to be in all major cities, because it's going to freak people out when these first arrests come, because the average American is not up on what really happened, this treason and sedition. We're not talking about, you look at some of the fake news where they say, well, these are dirty tricks in politics. These weren't dirty tricks. This was sedition and treason.
Yeah, and it's still alarming even the conspiracy crowd, like I mentioned. I mean, it seems like they're catching all these headlines from the fake news, and now I feel like because of Trump's demeanor, the way his character, I don't know, it doesn't seem to bother me as much, but it seems to bother, like, obviously the left, but it's also affecting a bunch of people that aren't necessarily on the right, but they're, let's say, anti-government or more like anarchist kind of thing. They're getting wound up about all this stuff too, right? I'm having a hard time staying with them, because a lot of this stuff is based on either connections that are really old or assumptions that about stuff happening in the future, like whether it's stablecoin and CBDCs, or whether it's the technocracy coming in and running the government with AI. I mean, it's all this stuff now is kind of out there. So where's my question in that? What's your thought about some of those, like how he's kind of freaking out multiple groups of people,
I think that's part of his plan. Obviously I'm not in President Trump's head. I've only met him once. I know the Trumps is Eric well, Don Jr., but he's a master player of chess, and he's always playing 2 or 3 moves, and he'll always use something here to look here while he's doing something there. He's got the fake news really focused in on this Epstein. Trump's going to go down in this Epstein. Well, my sources tell me behind the scenes that the Clintons are petrified with what they have on Epstein. Barack Obama is petrified. They have video evidence of Barack Obama, and also Bill Gates. So they should be sweating. So I don't know what his plan is.
I gotta unpack that a little bit, because it's like, why? So then why did it come out? What is this like smoke screen lately where Cash and Bongino and like all of a sudden there's like, oh, there is no list. Well, yeah, that's a conspiracy theory. And because that's part of what's making people freak the fuck out. It's just like, okay, well, this is a problem now, because once you start saying there's no list, when you said you had the list, it starts to make people freak out.
Well, I think he's technically right. I don't know if he's trying to play technical or not. I don't know if it's an actual list, but there are documents. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. But what has it done? It's got the fake news. That's all they talk about for the last 3 or 4 weeks is Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. It's waking up the average American to say, well, what's up with this Epstein? And they're doing their digging. And to me, I believe they're setting up. I know Cash knows more than that. And I've been told from reliable sources that have never been wrong in anything they've told me yet, that Epstein left that prison alive.
Yeah,
that's kind of our take too. Yeah, is that it was like almost an extraction or something happened, but that dude ain't dead.
Nope.
So Schiff is imminent then. So does that mean because there's been this sort of thing to just trust the plan to a certain extent now, and to use that word that's kind of loaded these days, but are we getting to the point? Because if Schiff gets arrested, that's got to change the sentiment. People are going to be like, whoa.
Well, Rick Gurnell had nobody's going to pick this up. I happen to see it. To me, I think that's a big deal. Rick Gurnell is, very close to President Trump. He stated in a tweet today, or an act, whatever you want to call it, that the Democrats are now running from Adam Schiff because they've seen the evidence and they cannot stand by it. That's huge. And I don't know why Rick Gurnell would say that if it's not true. But look at the evidence that John Solomon got out to the public the last 2 days. And John Solomon told me yesterday on HisGlory that we're going to see more bombshells this week.
So do you think they had to go a little deeper into the files then? So when Trump says that they're a hoax, does he mean that, the cabal from earlier kind of filled them full of bogus stuff or filtered through them? I mean, and so they have to kind of, I'm not saying I agree with all this, but maybe playing devil's advocate, sorry for the pun there, but that they have to clean up the files and at least make sure, like what he said, whatever's legit type thing. So you think he's open to the clean, legit files being released?
Yeah, I think he is. And I think there's no doubt what he said there's truth to it. You get the cabal and for 4 years, and they know that this evidence is damning. If you spy on a sitting president with the CIA, the FBI, and 51 so-called national security experts that say the Hunter Biden laptop is false Russian propaganda, when the sitting FBI director at the time was investigating it as real, those 51 should go right to jail. So yes, they had a chance to manipulate that. How much? I don't know. It's speculation. Was President Trump ever named in that? Was President Trump perfect in his times before? Nobody's perfect. First of all, he's a man, and we don't put our hope in a man. We put our hope in the living God. And I want to make sure people understand that. The only way we're getting out of this is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. People getting on their knees and repenting and seeking justice and seeing this great revival. And I believe the Lord's going to do that. He's cleaning up his church. One of the main reasons why we're this way in the United States, why we got this way, you got that way in Canada, is the church. The church didn't stand up to do what they were supposed to do. And that should never have happened on the church's watch, but we let it happen. We become complacent. We cave to the government, too concerned about our tax status or whatever it may be, to stay silent at the pulpits, and we let this evil in.
When did that happen?
Well, it started in the 60s here in America. It started in the 60s with taking God out of the schools. 70s, Satan went after the family. And so that's where you got all the huge divorce rates. You started seeing abortion in the 80s, 90s, and under Obama, legalizing gay marriage, and not only legalizing it, but putting rainbows up the White House, literally sticking his finger up at God. So that's where we got there. We see COVID-19, the shutdowns in the United States. Pastors here in America were deplatformed. They were arrested for just keeping their churches open. We've been deplatformed at HisGlory on YouTube, Facebook. We have 2.2 million followers on Facebook. Algorithms have turned against us because General Flynn's a friend of mine. He came out with truth. We supported that truth, and everything they banned us from us and deplatformed has now been proven absolutely true.
Go ahead.
Well, do you see? We see a bit of a growth to. I mean, I don't want to say Christianity because I'm not too sure. I'm not too familiar with all the different sects and all that, right? But there's a lot of people seem to be going towards Jesus without the church. So without the dogma of the church, there seems to be a movement of not only just famous podcasters and stuff like, let's say, Russell Brand or these other people that are like examples of this, but a lot of our past guests that aren't super popular, but we know them well, and they've, a good handful of them have converted over. So do you notice a big growth? Is that how long, if so, how long has it been happening? Is it because it seems to be Christianity is a rebellious stance right now? Like, it seems like, and it's funny, I was just reading this book about Jesus, and it really talks about him being a rebel, but it was from a mystical point of view as well, right? But it was really like he was kind of going against the dogma of the time. So it almost fits with what's happening, that the Christians are being persecuted again.
Yeah, Jesus went against the religious spirit. He went against the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They weren't about love. They were about religion. And if you're doing religion, you're doing it wrong. It's a love relationship with the Most High God and through Jesus Christ. So to your point, Graham, you're absolutely right. When Jesus created the church, and we went up on Pentecost and blew the Holy Spirit down, and Acts 2. That was about homes, cities. When Paul went out and preached the gospel, to cities like Corinth, there weren't churches there. It was cities. They would come together. Ecclesia means assembly of God's people. It was never meant to be in four walls and then get these divisions inside Christianity, these sects that you're talking about. There's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And that created walls, that created division, that created man-made doctrine coming in and watering it down and saying, hey, I don't like this part of the Bible. I'll take this. I won't take that. But 2 Timothy 3:16 tells us exactly what to do. It says all scripture, all 66 books by more than 40 authors, integrated a message system, is God-breathed for our doctrine and our edification, all scripture. And it's time for denominations to put Christ first and come together. And that's what we need to do, to preach the gospel from east to west to north to south. Whether you're a Baptist, whether you're Catholic, or whatever you may be, it's Jesus first.
Yeah, do you see that? Do you see that happening?
I do. J. Vernon McGee, when I started really studying the Bible, my mentor in the Bible was Chuck Missler. And he talked about this just 1999. He said, J. Vernon McGee prophesied in the end days, the church would go back to the home.
Oh, wow.
And the reason he said that the church would go back to the home, the reason originally, like what Paul intended it, or God intended it, was the persecution from the left side of the church that were not following the true gospel. They were getting away. And because they were outcast in their own church, and that we see that happening today. We see that happening in Canada. I can't tell you how many pastors I've been told by people like Arthur Pulowski that just kneed down at the government in Canada, and here in the United States as well. I would say 90%.
Yeah, they're literally burning churches in Canada, and the media ignores it. Everybody seems to just ignore it. It's not going good in Canada for this. So what did you mean by the left-hand side of the church? Is supposed to be symbolic to the left in politics, or the left-hand path in magic occultism, or both?
The liberal side of denominations in the church, where you can say, you know what Jesus said back then, not so much today. The church has replaced Israel. Men and men can get married. Everything works now. God never changes his word. Whether you like it or not, I'm called to be a servant of his word. It tells us 2 times in the scripture, do not add to or take away the words of his book. Deuteronomy 4 and also Revelation 22. So he's the author. He is the word. We're supposed to be obedient. Remember, one of the things that Jesus was asked, what is the greatest commandment? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. He did it in that order for a reason. It can't be the mind. It can't be intellect. That's religion. It's got to come through the heart, which is a love relationship. Then it comes to your essence, your soul, who you are, your when we die, our soul and spirit live on forever. And then your mind. And then he said, you have to take action. You have to be obedient. You have to be obedient to his word, all his word. we're not being
you mentioned the end times, and we've had a few people on the show that seem to think we're in the revelation part of things, where I mean, it all starts to the end times, the apocalypse, the end of the world. Is that your view, or where do you think we're at in the sort of timeline? Because I thought we were supposed to get 1,000 years of peace in here somewhere, and I've never seen that yet.
No, it has that again goes to, you know, some part of the left of the church where they call that a allegory, or there is one denomination right now that truly believes we're in the millennial reign of Jesus Christ right now. And if they truly believe that, then Satan's leash is too long, because Satan's supposed to be in the abyss when that 1,000 years of peace comes. What God does is,
sorry to interrupt you, but I feel like they're confusing that with the millennial reign of the British Empire.
It could be. We have not hit the millennial reign of Christ, because the millennial reign of Christ does not happen until he hits the earth the second time, and he hasn't been back the second time. So what God does through the Bible, he always shows us foreshadowing. For example, Abraham, that took Isaac up 3 days to Mount Moriah, was a foreshadowing of what the Father would have to do with Jesus, his son, the Son of God. So what I believe we are seeing, what I know we're seeing right now, is foreshadowing of the book of Revelation coming in the future. That whole beast system is waking people up. I have Israeli generals who don't believe in Christ. They're asking me every day, or every time I talk to them, are we close to this beast system? Tell me more about this. It's gotten people's awareness, and that's exactly what you need to do. Be aware. That's the good news. The bad news is this AI, the beast system, what we saw in COVID-19. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. It's here to stay. I believe we're going to see some great blessings. We're going to see a 1 billion soul harvest. There's going to be a golden age that's coming, but it's going to be a short window, and then the lawless one will come. And that years of tribulation, the true book of Revelation, will be in the future. Maybe not far away.
Not as far as we might hope.
So I don't think we have a lot of time. I think we have a short time of good times to get people to know who he is and be saved, because that's what we're here for. And then the system comes back. And when you're talking technology, and Dr. Naomi Wolf is a regular guest on HisGlory, and she's Jewish. She hasn't accepted Messiah yet. She's very close. We have Bible studies live on HisGlory with her. She fills in for me sometimes in the War Report. But she talks about the system with pharmacia, about how the plan was with COVID, and vaccines. And then the last phase of that was AI and robots to destroy mankind. So that system's, it's out. You can't put that back in. Right now we have an AI super race. President Trump, people don't like him getting into AI, but he's caught between a rock and a hard place. If he doesn't, China will overtake us, and then China becomes a superpower.
That's exactly what I was just going to say before you mention it, is that he must tread very carefully with the technocracy and the AI, but I just don't see it from an authoritarian point of view right now. I mean, of course it can be used for that, and maybe that's what you're talking about, is the golden age might be the implementation of that, but then the takeover of that could happen from somebody else later on. But I just don't see it being used for that right now. Of course you can use any kind of infrastructure for different purposes later on, but Naomi seems to push back quite a bit against Trump. It's good to see that you're continuing to have her on. I mean, it must be somewhat challenging too I mean, it's great to have different opinions and all that. I mean, I get her Substack, so I'm always sort of perusing what she's saying about stuff. It's an interesting time right now. There's a lot of people that aren't happy with one thing or another, with Trump or RFK, or it's just, and it's it kind of gets a bit annoying. Darren, do you have a question, or do you want me to?
No, you go ahead. You can keep going.
Well, I wanted to ask you about I forgot what my last question was going to be, but it's about the 17 things from 2017. There was what are some of the things that are, because that would have been like stuff that has already happened that had to come out, or I guess could have been predictions as well, right? So is there some stuff right now that we should talk about that people aren't knowing enough about, that you guys are discussing right now? Like, because I feel like people need to hear some of this stuff, this side, your side, this, sort of religious side, some of the main things that are happening, because again, the whole trust the plan thing kind of, I think we lost a lot of people, not we, but I think a lot of people were lost along the way because of what happened in 2020, and that we feel like there's never any results or arrests or anything like that. So what's happening right now that people need to know about that it's not really being talked about?
Well, I think the best thing to look at that is everything God does is for a purpose. We as humans want things quick. Here in America, Canada, you go through a Wendy's drive-through, you want a triple cheeseburger, a fry, and a Diet Coke real quick. And we want instant results. And, when you're talking about things that are so complicated, so evil, so intertwined, it takes time to unwind. It takes time to litigate and make sure you dot the I's and cross the T, and you got to catch them. I'm very optimistic today, more so than probably ever. And this is not just me. It's coming from, generals that know us. General McInerney, General Valley, General Flynn are all on with me. General McInerney and General Valley every month. So they see things happening. As I said, President Trump's attorney is very optimistic with this Act Blue, the stolen 2020 election. He believes they're going to be able to prove it. So all these things are starting to happen. And here we're talking about Adam Schiff. He's on the brink of being arrested. And if you would have done this back in, say, 2018, we would have been in a civil war.
Yeah.
And America wouldn't have survived. And that's the calculation you have to risk. What are the American people going to do? They've been lied to so much by this called a television. It's a television for a reason. Tulsi Gabbard, just last week said, Operation Mockingbird is still going on. Well, wait a minute. I thought Operation Mockingbird was taken care of a long time ago. Operation Popeye, which was manipulating the weather.
Yeah.
I didn't think they could manipulate the weather.
Yeah, it's one thing after another. We talk about that a lot because some of the stuff we talked about 10, 12 years ago. And it's amazing that all this stuff is being talked about openly at the highest levels. I mean, even Trump said once it was going to get colder. Like, he even told a bunch of scientists, like all these people trying to push climate change, he's like, it's going to get colder. So we would have never, ever guessed or expected that would happen. I mean, even RFK with autism and vaccines. And so I try to keep an open mind and some hope with some of the stuff, because we are getting these discussions. I mean, just a lot of people, nobody seems to have the patience these days for what's happening. It's not happening quick enough. I'm like, it's only been like RFK's only been there for 6 months, 7 months. I mean, he can't just dismantle the whole medical empire in 6 months. I mean, it's going to take some time. So what about what I was going to mention, which I'm remembering now, is that I heard some rumors that, again, fear mongering from the fake media probably and some other social media, but that it seemed like a formalization from the State Department with church, like some sort of like the people are scared that they're officially going to be kind of creating or implementing like a church for the administration.
I haven't heard anything about that. The only thing I've heard, which has just become public, IRS is now not going to go after pastors in the United States, which they should never have, for talking about who you should vote for biblically, and that's what put us in trouble. The fakeness of our Constitution, that there was this separation of church and state. It is nowhere in the Constitution of America, and that's again where the pastors stood down. Because they were threatened they'd lose their tax status. If you lose your tax status as a church, if we lost it tomorrow, we already have an LLC. God will provide. You can't worry about a tax status to stand up and tell the truth, because souls are on the line.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is UFOs and high technology. Trump has also made, I mean, again, and that wasn't in your 17 items, but UFOs has become another one of these topics that we've been talking about for a decade, and it's getting all kinds of play. There's the drones and Trump's scientific guys have been talking about the annihilation of space and time. I mean, they've really made some hints. Trump even himself talked about his uncle, going to Tesla. I mean, these are things that I cannot believe we're hearing at the highest levels of government. So do you have any thoughts about that? The whole UFO, the whole UFO question, I guess UAPs now, is Trump going to address this? Is this part of the golden age? Is that going to be part of the disclosure?
Well, L.A. Marzulli is probably the best I know out there talking about UFOs and what they are. He has a show on the HisGlory network, and he's absolutely brilliant. My mentor is Chuck Missler. He said back in 1998, I believe it was, that he believed in the end days that before the church was taken up, that the government would start talking about UFOs, and that would be the excuse of where the church got raptured. And we're seeing that start to happen. They are not little green men that are running around from another planet. They are demons. And that's another thing that the church was hijacked on. They took the book of Enoch out of canon. And when you understand the book of Enoch, it all makes perfect sense. When the 200 watchers, Satan was thrown out of heaven. He took 200 angels with him on Mount Hermon, and they came down. It's in our Bible 47 times, but not as specific as it is in the book of Enoch. And they mated with women. They created an offspring. And that's where Greek mythology, Roman mythology of these gods came from. It's not made up. It's real. They're demons. And that's where demons come from. And again, another thing that pastors don't talk about, they never talk about hell. Jesus talks about hell. Hey, if I went up to heaven, which I did, there's another place. If there's a heaven, there's a hell. And nobody wants to talk about demons. Demons are real as well. There's a good movie out there called Nefarious that a guy I know wrote. It was done as a horror movie. I think it's on Amazon, but it talks about demons, and it's one of the best done. And more people need to look at these movies like this because demons are among us. They're real.
Yep. Can you give us some examples?
I've seen demons manifest. When I went to first time I literally saw a demon in front of my eyes was when I went to Liberia. We did a revival in Liberia. We had 1,000 people come to Christ, baptized another 450 in the Holy Ghost. But this woman came up right away, and you could see something was off. She was foaming at the mouth. I've never seen a demon before. And it's just this horrific voice that was not her voice. And I didn't know what to do but go back to the training of the Bible and just pray. I prayed in the Spirit, in the name of Jesus, the blood of Jesus. And all of a sudden you heard this whistling sound, 7, boom, boom, boom. And these pastors in Liberia immediately prayed over her, and she accepted Christ and became normal. I saw a man who was probably about 6'5". He could have played defensive end for the Detroit Lions, just slain by a demon like 6 or 7 times, just supernatural power. And it took the prayer, the blood of the Lamb to get that demon out. I've been at Greg Locke's church where I saw a little girl that had the strength of about 10 men that was demon possessed. And the only way you get these demons out is the name of Jesus. And people don't see them because they don't want to hear about it. Church doesn't talk about it. Because it gets messy.
Yeah. I got to, it seems like, because even coming from my side of things, which is more of it seems like there's some sort of cataclysm on the horizon. It seems like things are ramping up in all sorts of different directions here. And you can't help but wonder if, those first few words of Genesis sure seem like some sort of apocalyptic warning. We should bring Israel into this because that's the other, we talked about Ukraine and that the other sort of big conflict going on is Israel, which is sort of has broader implications. And the other thing that's interesting is it seems like the last people that the Christians would be buddying up with. I'm a little naive on my religion studies, but wasn't it the Jews that killed Jesus?
Well, that's what there was the religious spirit that killed Jesus, but Jesus's death wasn't a tragedy; it was a triumph. He died because that's the way the Father said the only way to reconcile man. So, who put Jesus on that cross? Yes, it was the Sadducees and the Pharisees of that time, but you and me, I put Jesus on that cross because of my sin, and I needed a savior. We couldn't do it on our own, and we needed a savior. he is that savior. And the Jews are looking for this Messiah. It's not something they don't understand. It is in the Old Testament. And that's another thing where the church is changed, which it shouldn't have changed, is saying this nonsense that the church has replaced Israel. Therefore, you don't need to read the Old Testament. Now, you need to understand God's promises from him and to the prophets of old. Israel is very much in play. It's always Israel and Jerusalem are always going to be the center of attention because Satan wants that throne. That throne is going to be in the New Jerusalem. And that's where Christ will rule and reign in the millennial reign and forever in the New Jerusalem. So everything is around the city of Jerusalem. And I take a lot of heat. I'm part Jewish. I found out a few years ago that I'm from the tribe of Judah. And I have many friends, many generals that I know in Israel. We go to Israel just about every year to take tour groups to Israel. Now, people are coming against Israel. It's no different than Canada or no different than the United States of America. There are elements inside the Israeli government, secular government, are evil. We don't support that evil secular government. It's biblical promises that God made to Abraham and King David that will be fulfilled by their coming Messiah and our Messiah, who is Jesus the Christ. So I don't know why people always say Israel is all good or Israel is all bad. It's not that simple.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It does seem like that's what the way people treat Israel. So what about the modern day Israel and the war that's going on right now and Trump's involvement in that? And so did they overstep? Like, why wouldn't they just stop? I feel like Israel just went too far this time, the modern day Israel. So not the biblical kind of reference, but whatever's controlling it right now, whether that's evil or not. I mean, I don't know, but it seems like they're just going too far. Like they're just pissed off too many people. Like if you end up, because they would have had quite a few people on their side at the beginning, but they're just dragging it out so long. And can Trump, and is he going to stop it?
I think you'll get peace there at some point, but people just don't understand that. That's why you have to go to Israel to see it with your own eyes, because the fake news will tell you they lied. Look at finally the United Nations just yesterday admitted that 87% of all food supplies are being hijacked. They're not getting to the people, and the fake news lied about that forever. Oh, Israel's starving the people. And then there was a fake news report that Israel took out Al Jazeera. Well, now you look back, that there was terrorists that were acting as journalists. So Israel, what happened on October the 7th changed Israel. We look at 9/11 as a big day in America, but that was like 3 times that for Israel, the amount of people killed, the massacre. And that was absolutely devastating. People want to say that it wasn't true, real. I've seen firsthand reports of it. I've been to the hospital where those victims went. I was literally at the military base that was attacked and killed 3 months before that event happened. And the general that I was with said, when an attack comes on us, it's going to come from here. And that's exactly where the attack came. And then, people will say inside the Israeli government, we were caught off guard. No, they were not caught off guard. They knew they had to be on red alert always. I've probably had 13 or 14 Israeli generals on HisGlory, and every one of them for the last 4 or 5 years up to October 7th said, we know when they're coming. They'll always try a Jewish holiday. And sure enough, they did. And I was told about a year ago, maybe about a year and a half ago, that would have been one of 3 people inside the Israeli government gave a stand down to allow that massacre to happen. Yeah. General Flynn broke the internet last week by saying the same thing, that there was a high level at the Israeli government that allowed a stand down to occur. I'm told it was one of 3 people that betrayed the nation of Israel to allow that to happen, to have innocent women and children killed. No different than 9/11. So there's evil elements to every government. That's what the cabal, evil, demonic system is, and we got to clear it out.
To enable the backlash, I mean, to enable this war to go on. I mean, so why won't they focus on the hostages then? And like, why won't the it's interesting talking to you about it because we don't really go into this very often, but it seems to me like the people that are sort of, protesting all over supporting Hamas and Palestine, like why aren't they putting pressure on Hamas to just let go of the hostages too? Like, I don't understand why Israel can say, Oh, they still have hostages, and then nobody seems to do anything about it.
Well, Israel, my fear is that most of those hostages are probably dead. Well, Israel's got one of the best intelligence forces. What they did with Iran was second to none. Generals were just killed. They didn't know it was coming. Just boom, boom, boom. They were gone before that bombing. They did an absolutely incredible job before, excuse me, the United States came in with a brilliant maneuver. And people say, oh, that's terrible. We want peace. We want peace. But they don't understand the religion of the Ayatollah of Iran. He fundamentally believes that if he gets a nuclear weapon, he will use it because he believes that if he kills big Satan America, little Satan Israel, their 12th Mahdi will come back. That would be like us thinking we need to blow somebody up because Jesus is going to come back. It's not if they're going to do it, they will do it. And you can't allow that to happen. It's not like a China or a Russia. If you nuke them, they'll nuke you back and you both will be in oblivion. This is an ideology, and it's getting into the United States of America. You wonder why we have students at all universities chanting pro-Palestine. They have no idea until we start following the money with Doge and US aid. It's coming from Qatar. It's coming from Hamas, the Muslim Brotherhood. They're feeding this propaganda in these universities to get these students to believe that Israel's bad and pro-Palestine. The Palestinians, the everyday Palestinians, I have friends that are Palestinians. They're going to say their enemy is not the Israeli government. Their enemy is the leadership of Palestine.
Is there a chance it's going to end then, do you think? I mean, did Trump, it is one of the things that Trump, was kind of exaggerating and saying, oh, I'm going to end it right away. Do you think there's a chance he can do it?
Well, I just heard, I think it was yesterday, from a source that's in Israel. Yesterday, Benjamin Netanyahu gave the green light to go into Gaza to finish it off. And they're preparing that mission and letting the people of Gaza come out before they go in and take that out. And I'm told that behind the scenes, they're talking to some of the other Middle Eastern countries to put money in there and bring it back to life, to give people hope in Gaza. Because if you go to Gaza, even before October 7th, we go right by that. We go into 2 areas, actually 3 areas of Palestine on our trip. We go into Bethlehem, we go into Hebron, and we go into Samaria. And you can see the difference between the different sectors of Israel. There's an A sector, there's a B sector, and then the C sector is where Hamas or Hezbollah or some of these terrorist organizations take place. These people don't have trash. Trash is everywhere. No running water, no food, no electricity, no windows. And they're like, how do they live? So they get jobs and come into Israel. They get a real life. Israel gives them an opportunity. Now, am I saying all of Israel is great? No, there's evil elements inside of Israel. But the propaganda that comes is just, you have to see it with your own eyes to realize what the truth is.
Yeah. Darren, do you have any comments on that? Or do you?
Well, I was going to, because you had mentioned the 9/11 thing. Do you think it's the same people behind both? Because it seems like, Pete, there's no way they didn't know 9/11 was coming. There's a bunch of super sketchy shit all around that.
I do. And what's the biggest moneymaker? War. It's all about war. Why do we go to war in Iraq? Money. The Halliburtons of the world. Money. War is money. It's a money machine. People get rich off war. That's why, you'll go back to the World War II where people like Prescott Bush were playing both sides of the fence. And because they're getting money, they're getting paid. And when you shut down the war machine, that shuts down the money flow. And these big cabal, they want that money to flow. And that's why you see so many former secretaries of defense of the United States of America that go to, what do they do when they retire? They go work for the Boeings of the world, the ammunition, the companies that build the war machines because they need money.
Well, we should probably talk about Trump and Putin if we can for a bit here. Do you think there's going to be any results with sort of making peace with Ukraine and Russia right now?
Well, I certainly hope so. I know President Trump, if he's going to go to Alaska to meet with him Friday, I know somebody else is a friend of mine that's meeting with him, Putin, I think tomorrow, before President Trump gets there. So there's going to be some maneuvering before President Trump gets there.
Like an American?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, a well-known American.
Yeah.
So with President Trump doing this, making that announcement, I think you're going to see some sort of announcement. But remember what we just talked about, the deep state cabal and the war machine. Ukraine is all about money. And to keep that war going is money for them. Putin doesn't want that money or want it to continue to go on. And I'm not saying Putin's a good guy. He's not. But in this case, Ukraine was all about money laundering, war, politicians being paid. Why did Putin respond? One of the big reasons is Tulsi Gabbard told us. They had bioweapons in Ukraine, and you get a bioweapon. We see what COVID-19 did. Can you imagine if you got botulism toxin like I had? The whole nation wouldn't survive if you could put that into an aerosol. And my sources tell me that COVID-19 was the backup plan. They wanted to use botulism toxin first.
And they were planning that since, I don't know, at least 2010, probably, it seems like. So did they just wait? Was that just the right time before the 2020 election kind of thing? Was it that important to do it then? Or do you think that long-term plan was already in place?
The long-term plan was in place. I think they had probably expedited it because the risk of Trump. They could not let him come back at that time. So they thought, hindsight being 2020, the best thing they probably could have done was let him win that, because he'd be out of office now and we wouldn't have discovered most of the stuff that we've discovered.
Is he going to try and clean up some of the election tomfoolery too? Or?
Yes. This Act Blue goes directly to politicians. It goes directly to 2020 elections, goes back to absentee ballots. The amount of absentee ballots that were done in 2020 was under the disguise of COVID-19. People couldn't get out, and that's how they rigged the system, just feeding those ballots in and in. You just don't show up in Detroit, Michigan at 3:00 in the morning with, well, I think it was 455,000 ballots, and every single ballot was Joe Biden. It's mathematically impossible.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
There's got to be some risk to getting those two together. If you look at the point of view that Trump is fighting the cabal, then those are probably the two dudes on the planet that are fighting the cabal. Because without Putin, there probably is no Iran anymore. There's probably no, all that shit that, what was his name again? The Wes Clark, Major General Wes Clark mentioned.
Yeah, Wes Clark 7, yeah.
That they were going to wipe out over the next 5 years, and they clearly weren't able to get it done in 5 years, but they're also on the track to try and get to all those countries. Without Putin, they probably can do that in 5 years. If you don't have this sort of threat of Putin on the other side of some of these places like Syria, North Korea, Iran, then you can probably steamroll through them. So, I'm not saying Putin's a good guy either, but he's been fighting this cabal for a lot longer than we have.
Exactly. And Putin is one of the richest. I'm told he's the richest man in the world. He because you can't track it. He's got more physical gold than anybody on the planet. Putin is he's been a thorn in the side of the deep state, no question. They would love to take him out. So is the Prince of Saudi as well. That's why they tried to take him out in Las Vegas. And President Trump, like I said, I've been told at least 44 attempts on his life.
Yeah. Wow.
Is that what they were up to in Vegas?
Yeah, they were going after the Saudi prince, and President Trump stepped in and stopped that. It was an assassination attempt.
So was the shooting up of the people that was just sort of the distraction that was going to be going on while it happened?
Yeah, most likely. Yep.
What's your take on Greenland and Canada and all the 51st state stuff? Like, is there a secure? Are we a security threat to you guys?
No, we love our brothers and sisters in Canada. However, the Carney is he's WHO. He's a globalist.
He's the epitome of
he's doing to Canada is horrible. Greenland is a whole different story. Greenland is a incredible asset for the United States of America with raw minerals. We got to have those raw minerals. There is a let's just say a very important United States military base in Greenland as well.
Yeah, interesting.
That most people don't know about.
Do you have any sort of prediction? Because you're probably closer to the administration than anybody we've talked to. It's kind of surprising that you ended up on our show. Do do you see sort of anything in the short term, like other than the shift thing? Is there any other sort of major pieces in place? Because the one thing I'll mention about Graham mentioning the 51st state is that if you kind of watch some of the stuff Trump says over the last 10 to 15 years, even before he was president, they sort of sound crazy at first. But they almost always, I mean, even when people were saying he was saying to drink bleach, right? And it turned out that there was this weird little light thing that went on. And he was like, he was trying to explain in construction or New York construction terms what some crazy fucking scientist had said to him. And it just, that's how it came out. But these weird sort of things he says tend to sort of pan out in the end in some way, shape, or form. I mean, people say he lies all the time, and maybe he does, but they tend to come true, it seems like, on a long enough timeline a lot of the time. And you can't forget that, Texas said they weren't interested in joining 3 years before they were begging to join.
Yeah, there's more to it. I've been shared some stuff from some folks in Canada that there's a possibility something like that could happen based on the Canadian Charter with the King and Queen. If that's what he's referring to, I don't know. But you're right. Anytime he says a little nugget like that, you better listen carefully, because I remember the first time he ran in office, and he said John McCain is a what did he say? I don't like war.
Coward or something like that.
Yeah, coward. I'm like, I was upset being a Marine. I'm like, how could he go against John McCain? I mean, he's a war hero. Well, I was wrong. He was right. Generals later told me that John McCain's nickname was Songbird. He turned on people, and President Trump knew. He just put that out there and took a lot of abuse for it, but it came to be true.
I wonder if he was talking when he was in them prison camps.
He was.
Yeah, that's what that would sort of.
That's why he's called Songbird.
Yeah.
He gave up a lot of U.S. military, and that's coming directly from 3 generals in America that has told me that.
So the other thing that's pretty apparent is they must have had all those COVID vaccines like made and ready to go before that stuff rolled out, right? I mean, it all sort of happened so fucking fast, and they made a couple billion of these things. Like how? Because we sort of touched on COVID, but we didn't touch on the vaccine. How did the vaccine fit into all this sort of stuff?
Well, that was part of phase 2, phase 3. COVID was just the symptom to get the vaccine into people's body. Diehard doctors like Dr. Zelenko, who is now gone, Dr. Petard, which many believe was killed, telling the truth that millions of people would die. The activation of that hydrogel inside these vaccines with a combination of 5G technology is a death blow. Right now, Peter McCullough, who's been on our network many times, I think he's on next week with me again, talking about people are walking around taking time bombs because of these vaccines. We're seeing turbo cancer. We're seeing deaths like we've never seen. I remember Dr. Bartlett, who's a dear friend of mine, and Dr. Zelenko and Dr. Petard, all 3 of them telling me that the problem's not now. And he says 3-4 years from now is when the problem. Millions of people are going to start falling dead, died suddenly. Now you got movies called Died Suddenly. Athletes who took the vaccine as part of the plan to part of depopulation. That's where AI is coming in for the last blow, according to Dr. Naomi Wolf, as part of the 3-pronged approach: vaccines, and then the last phase, AI and robots.
How come Trump won't let go of this Project Warp Speed thing? I mean, it seems to be the real thing that I mean, it's still thorn in my side whenever you start getting too excited about Trump, but he still warp speeded us. He fucking warp speeded us.
Yeah,
the explanation I've heard is that, well, they had a worse vaccine and he rushed it, so they were able to get more placebos out than kill shots or whatever. Because I do know some people got 7-8 of these fucking things, and they still seem okay.
Yeah,
fingers crossed.
What you're saying is true, because the doctors will tell you by the lot numbers on the vaccine. They know some were blanks, placebos. I don't know if that was part of President Trump. I've heard the same thing you've heard from very reliable sources, that he knew what they were doing. He rushed it quickly so that they would have to be forced into this because he didn't have a choice. Either tens of hundreds of millions of people or die, or what we experienced. And he had to make a choice. Whether that's a fact or not, we'll see at the end of the day. But there were placebos, no doubt about it. And unfortunately, these vaccines are worse than anybody can ever imagine. You mentioned RFK Jr. earlier, that people wanted to see him do more. I think that's a good example why people don't understand what the term deep state means. Deep state is not the elected people. The deep state are the people, the bureaucrats that are underneath that you don't see, that are in these organizations, and they control it. It's not the president. It's not the head of the CDC or the HHS. It's these bureaucrats. That is the deep state. I know RFK Jr., and I know a couple of people very close to him, said he's gone through the biggest fight of anybody on President Trump's cabinet because it's infected with a deep state, and they're trying to sabotage him every single way which is possible. And for what he's done so far, I think it's been pretty miraculous based on what I've heard and what I know. He's been sabotaged. They wouldn't let him get his right people around him. And it takes time to build up the right team and get rid of that deep state. Another important thing that President Trump did, getting to the Supreme Court and having the legal authority to get rid of the deep state and fire them. Now they can do that. That's huge.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah, I agree. I agree with the RFK thing. I mean, people that we know that say that he's controlled by Israel or something like that. I mean, that's the excuse that seems to be used for all these people that aren't going as fast as they want. So the other thing I want to ask you is, I was thinking about when Trump lets something slip and you pay attention to it. Darren and I kind of joke around a little bit about this, but I feel like there's something to it. But I think he wants to be king of North America. I think he wants to work out something with the English, with the English crown, and like just be like, hey, like Canada can be there, still like pretend they're Canada, but like basically like we'll take over Greenland and Canada and have the whole of North America. And to be honest with you, where things are at right now with Canada, I mean that couldn't happen fast enough for me. I mean we're collapsing, we're broken beyond repair. So that to me would be a solution for us.
Well, that to me is kind of what I was talking about, where it's like he might just be saying, look, man, I've seen the books. You guys are going to be like, without me even getting involved, you guys got like 5 years left before you're going to be begging us to join. And I mean, you've got a couple places already that are, 30-40%. Like, where do I sign, man? Let's go. And that's with that's with a giant orange man bad blanket over the entire country right now that the mainstream media and everything's trying to paint just over top of that whole thing. And with no campaigning, with no like, hey, here's the facts of what you would get as an American state, and here's what you get as a province, or blah, blah, blah.
Well, if he became king of Canada and the United States tomorrow, it wouldn't be any different than our voting system in the United States or your voting system in Canada. The Canadians and the United States citizens are not voting those people in. It's rigged. And we got to get those machines out of there to get true votes, because we think we vote the right people in office. We haven't been. And this goes back a long. This is not just under Trump. This goes back, I'm told, to the 60s. Wow. 1960s, they've been stealing elections, and it's been rigged, both sides of the fence.
Well, I mean, Dave McGowan, the late Dave McGowan, talks about in his book how, because was it Truman who took over after Kennedy got shot?
From
Truman
Dallas.
took over
Johnson. My dad was the
took over when the other guy died, right?
Yeah, FDR.
FDR. So back when FDR died already, there was this other dude. It seemed, I can't remember his name, it escapes me, but it seemed like he was going to be the good fit to run the Democratic Party, but he was like too like freedom. He was too much of an old school Democrat. And they basically, I mean, he was talking about how this was like back in the 50s and 60s. Like at that time, if you wanted to vote for in the convention or whatever, you had to be in the room, and you had to be in the room by a certain time, and they were fucking locking people out, and they wouldn't let them. He's like, there was actually like fist fights breaking out in front of these places during this stuff to steer candidates. So I mean, the whole like early world. I mean, it's all more gangster than we think. You know, it's like that's part of the thing about the West and probably the entire world is this shit is just run by gangsters that were able to just sort of keep the shit going for a long time. I mean, freedom or not, it's been a gangster's paradise, it seems like, for a long time.
And
but
here
it was a pretty free gangster's paradise. If they would have just let us have, like, you know, like Graham and I were saying before, if we could have just stayed on like that trajectory we were sort of on in 2013, 2012, maybe a little before that, where you hadn't, I mean, even better, you could go back to like the 50s where it was like, you know, one person in the family can work and everyone can have enough money. You can, I mean, you just keep it at that. And you probably could have kept us, you know, in the fucking raccoon cage forever, but they just got a little too greedy.
And exposure came, you know, the light, God's light at the right time when his people prayed. You mentioned Kennedy. You know, it was always a conspiracy in the United States who shot JFK. Now we know elements of our own government took him out, and who replaced him. You know, Johnson was part of that. George H.W. Bush was part of that. He was part of the CIA. He was part of going after Ronald Reagan. Those are two of the 17 scandals.
You were going to say a relative of yours?
Yeah, my father was the chef on Air Force One under Johnson. I was born at Camp David, Andrews Air Force Base.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, that's crazy. Before we start to wrap up, is there anything we missed?
I think we talked about every scandal on the face of the earth.
We did. But
remember, light wins.
That seems to be, you know, that's what I tell when people they're like, well, you know, I feel like the good guys win in the end, one way or another. The good guys win in the end, or some shit happens that wipes everyone out to the point where we get another chance at setting up the board. Because those seem to be the two options. Either it's like the Bible is the true word of God, and you know, the light wins, or the Bible is just, you know, talking about coming back from some cyclical cataclysm that nobody wins. And then, but at least we don't get tyranny, you know, like I would argue that going back to the Stone Age is fucking better than tyranny. I do not want to live underneath someone's boot. I would rather have to live off the land again.
Yep.
Thanks for coming on our show and sharing your perspective and your organization's work and all the people you're, you know, having on your platform. So keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. Thank you for both of you for having me. And it's been a pleasure. And again, we continue to pray for Canada. And I believe you're going to see breakthrough in Canada. It doesn't mean it's going to get easy. It's going to probably get harder before it gets better. But I do believe light is going to win.
All right. Thanks.
Where can people find everything?
You can find us at hisglory.me. That's where our 24/7 programming is. And also hisglory.tv is all of our music, documentaries, and movies.
Dave Scarlett, thanks for coming on the show. Come back anytime. Have a good day and good luck out there.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.
And that was a chat with Pastor Dave Scarlett. Are we witnessing the end time? It sounds like maybe we are. I mean, this is the one constant among a lot of the shows we've done about this lately is like, yeah, unfortunately, it seems like we're into the last few pages here. But that was good. I mean, wow, fantastic show.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah.
Big thanks to Dave for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Even bigger thanks, guys, if you are a Plus members. So thanks for sticking with us. Tell your friends to sign up for Plus. Check out Grimerica.ca for other content. Adultbrain.ca for all the audiobooks, ebooks, and all that sort of stuff. Contact@thecabin.com for trips and events, and a-list.ca for all that Canadian political stuff. Other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.